9 vehicles, most under $12,000 apiece, that outlive your $90,000 F250 by a Tuesday afternoon. The Tuesday afternoon the systems your truck depends on stop. The size of the truck is the wrong question. The right one is the chain count, the number of electronic links between the key in your hand and one cylinder firing once. Your F250 has 11 of them. The Toyota a Polish farmer drove past a dead grid in 1984 had 2. We are going to go vehicle by vehicle, tier by tier, price by price. And by the end of this, you will know the chain count of the truck in your driveway and what specifically kills it the day the chain breaks. Let me show you what chain count actually means on a truck. Here's the engineering reality. Between the moment you turn your key and the moment the first cylinder fires, there is a sequence of electronic dependencies, and every link in that sequence is a single point of failure. Tier 4, the post-2010 emissions cascade truck in dealer's lot, has 7 to 12 of those links. The engine control unit reads pedal position and crankshaft sensor and decides injection timing. The electronic fuel injection actuates the injectors at the timing the ECU calculated. The immobilizer chip in your key talks to the ECU over a coded radio handshake before the ECU will fire anything. The diesel exhaust fluid dosing module checks urea level and quality, and if it does not like what it sees, it tells the ECU to derate the engine to 5 miles per hour, then to refuse to start. The common rail high-pressure pump generates the 30,000 psi fuel pressure all 6 injectors share. The glow plug control module preheats the cylinders. The transmission control module decides when to shift. 12 links, 12 places the truck stops. Tier 1, the pre-1985 mechanical truck, has 0 of those links. Mechanical lift pump, mechanical injection pump, mechanical timing. Throttle cable from your foot directly to the injection pump's fuel metering valve. Glow plugs wired straight to a relay and a manual switch on the dash. You turn the key, the starter spins, the engine fires, you drive. There is no chip in your key. There is no module to update. There is no urea sensor to fail. Tier 2, 1985 to 1995, light electronics, has 1 or 2 links, usually the glow plug timer, and sometimes electronic injection control. Tier 3, 1995 to 2007, has 3 to 6, mostly ECU and EFI and immobilizer, but no emissions cascade yet. Tier 4 is where it crosses the cliff. We will use those tier numbers all the way through, so park them in the front of your head. Wymowo Piski, Poland, 2022. Grzegorz Pawlak, Patryk Prochocki, Przemysław Szymiński, and Tomasz Skrzek, 4 engineers attached to the Military Institute of Armament Technology in Poland, published a paper in Scientific Reports, Volume 12, Article number 2115. On February 8, 2022, peer-reviewed, open access. The journal is Nature Portfolio. You can pull the article up on your phone right now, and you should, because what they did inside it is the cleanest piece of evidence I have ever seen for everything I just told you about chain count. Why does a paper about a Polish military truck matter for your 2018 F250 sitting in a suburb of Columbus? Because the engineering question is the same, and the answer they wrote down is one your dealer will not tell you. Here is the scenario they wrote into the test plan, verbatim from the paper. __, quote, _0__. That is the starting condition. A heavy-duty truck, modern, multiple ECUs, 6-cylinder common rail diesel. Every electronic component fried, not unplugged, not glitching, physically destroyed at the silicon level by an electromagnetic pulse. Their target performance was modest by civilian standards and brutal by engineering standards. Drive at least 5 kilometers, carrying at least 60% of the truck's permissible load. 5 kilometers, 3 miles. Not 5,000 kilometers, 5. The truck they used was a Scania P340. The engine was a Scania DC11, 6-cylinder, 11-liter, compression ignition. This is a real heavy-haul tractor unit, the kind that pulls a 40-foot trailer on a German autobahn, the kind that hauls aggregate to a construction site, the kind your local concrete contractor parks behind his shop. Stock chain count, 10 to 12. They assumed every one of those links destroyed. The engineering payoff is what they built to replace the chain. They called it an emergency fueling unit, EFU. Their description, again verbatim from the paper. The EFU is entirely a mechanical construction. No microchip, no sensor, no software. A pressurized tank holds a fuel blend, JP8 jet fuel cut with rapeseed oil.
Fuel line here, then
Compressed air pushes the fuel out of the tank through a fuel collector into a set of injectors mounted in the individual intake channels of the engine. Air pressure does the metering. Geometry does the timing. Compression ignites the mixture. The truck's original fuel system, every electronically controlled component of it, is bypassed, disconnected, irrelevant. The EFU sits on top of a destroyed truck like a mechanical pacemaker. They ran the practical test on a 5-kilometer route, 50% unpaved ground, 50% concrete. They ran it with the truck empty, and then they ran it with the truck loaded, 2 concrete blocks, 3.5 tons each, sitting in the bed. They repeated the start test 5 separate times. 5 times out of 5, the EFU started the engine. 100% effectiveness. The truck drove. 30 kilometers per hour. About 20 miles an hour. Not fast. But your mental model of a working truck is probably 5,000 kilometers a year. 60 miles an hour. Refuel in 8 minutes at a pilot. That is not the comparison here. The comparison here is between 30 kilometers per hour and 0. Between rolling and parked forever. 30 kilometers per hour. Loaded with 7 tons of concrete on a truck whose ECU does not exist anymore. Here is the part that you should sit with for a moment, because it is the engineering paradox the paper buries on page 7. Empty truck. The standard fuel system on the Scania DC11, the working, undamaged factory system, accelerates the truck at 0.55 meters per second squared. The EFU, the cobbled-together emergency mechanical bypass, accelerates the same truck at 0.9 meters per second squared. The mechanical bypass outperforms the factory chain by a factor of nearly 2 on acceleration. Not because the EFU is cleverer. Air pressure does not wait for an ECU to make a decision. And on this specific test bed, on this specific route, that translates to nearly twice the acceleration of the factory chain. One honest boundary, and I want this in your head before you go shopping. The prototype Pawlak's team built used an electric starter motor. The same starter motor the truck came with from the factory. In their scenario, that starter would also be destroyed. The authors are explicit about this. A pneumatic starter would need to be installed for the truck to be fully electrically independent. So the EFU, as published, is not a turnkey kit. It is a proof of concept. It demonstrates that a mechanical fuel and air system can bring a destroyed ECU truck back to operational status on a route with cargo, repeatable 5 out of 5. The next iteration installs the pneumatic starter. That is engineering work, not magic, and the paper says so on the last page. What kills the truck on the day the systems stop? What is the actual variable? Here is the category. Not a brand, not an agency, not a person. A way of speccing trucks. The electronic chain count category is what happens when every truck design decision over the last 25 years has answered the same question. How do we control this variable with software? Instead of the older question, how do we let this variable take care of itself with geometry? Each answer added one link. Each link looked rational by itself. Stacked together, they produce a truck whose chain count crossed from manageable to brittle somewhere around model year 2007, when emissions cascade architecture became federally required, and three new links: DEF dosing, diesel particulate filter regeneration, and selective catalytic reduction control, all moved into the same ECU as fuel and timing. Trace the failure backward, one link at a time, and you can see what each one does to your specific truck the morning the grid is out. The engine control unit. It is the master computer that reads crankshaft position, pedal position, intake air temperature, coolant temperature, manifold pressure, and 20 other signals, calculates injection timing, and tells the injectors when to fire. If the ECU itself fails, water intrusion, EMP, a single bad capacitor on the board, a corrupt firmware update, the truck does not start. Period. The injectors will not fire without it. You can have a full tank, a healthy battery, and a working starter, and the truck will turn over and never catch. The electronic fuel injection. Specifically the high-pressure common rail injectors and the rail pressure sensor that the ECU reads to decide injection duration. If one sensor fails and reports a value the ECU does not believe, the ECU goes into limp mode, 5 miles per hour, then refuses to start until the sensor is replaced. The Bosch CP4 high-pressure pump that feeds the rail is the single point of failure for the entire fuel system on most modern light-duty diesels. One pump, 6 cylinders. Pump fails. All 6 injectors lose pressure simultaneously. The immobilizer. The chip in your key has an RFID transponder. When you turn the key, the steering column antenna reads the transponder code, sends it to the ECU, and the ECU compares it against the codes stored in its memory. Mismatch or no signal, or dead transponder battery, and the ECU disables fuel injection at the software level. The key turns, the starter spins, the engine never fires. You can be standing next to a perfectly mechanical pump with fuel in the tank and a charged battery, and you will not move. DEF dosing, diesel exhaust fluid, urea-based. Required by EPA Tier 4 emissions standards on every on-road diesel sold in the United States after 2010. The DEF dosing module checks tank level, fluid quality, and injection rate. If it does not like what it sees, it commands the ECU to derate the engine to roughly 5 miles per hour. Then to disable starting altogether within a fixed number of restart cycles. This is not a check engine light. This is a federal emissions rule kill switch the manufacturer installed because they had to. EPA wrote the rule. The manufacturer implemented it. The chain link is in your truck because of both. Common Rail 4, Bosch CP4 again. 30,000 PS, high shared rail pressure across 6 injectors. Single high-pressure pump. One failure, 6 cylinders go quiet at the same moment. The __2__ version of this conversation skips the chain count audit entirely, adds a heavier bumper, larger tires, a winch, a roof rack, leaves the 11 electronic links on the truck untouched. Bigger truck, same 11 links. Same Tuesday afternoon, the systems your truck depends on stop. Look at the truck in your driveway right now, or the one parked at your job site, or the one your father-in-law drives. Pick the one you would reach for the day the grid drops. 5 questions. I want you to answer each one out loud, or at least mentally, before you keep watching. 1. You know whether your truck has an ECU at all, or is it pre-1995? If it has an ECU, do you know where the ECU itself is physically located on the vehicle? Under the hood, under the dash, behind the kick panel? 2. The key in your hand right now, does it have an immobilizer chip in it, or is it a simple cut metal key? If you do not know, here is the test. Borrow a key cutter's blank, cut it at any hardware store for $4. Put it in your ignition, and try to start the truck. If it cranks but does not fire, your truck has an immobilizer, and that uncut metal blank is not going to be enough. 3. The DEF- light on your instrument cluster. When did it last come on? What did the message say? Did the dealer reset it? Or did the system clear itself once you topped up the urea tank? Do you know how many restart cycles your truck has before the ECU disables starting entirely after a DEF fault? 4. Walk to the front of the engine. If your truck is post-2007 light-duty diesel, find the high-pressure pump on the rail. Bosch CP4 on Fords, Bosch CP3 on older Cummins, Denso HP3 on Duramax. Can you point to it without opening the manual? Do you know what a metal shavings warning sign looks like in your fuel filter? The leading indicator that pump is about to take the rail and all 6 injectors with it. 5. Last one. Grid drops in your zip code, 3 a.m., Thursday in February. You have not started the truck in 8 days. What is your honest answer? Does it start? Not should it start. Does it? If you are not sure, the chain count is doing exactly what it is designed to do. Sit with that for one more sentence, because the rest of the video is built around what to do about it. One thing before we go to the pics. If you keep a vehicle that has to start in a year, your phone might not. Subscribe. I look at how things actually break, not how they are marketed. The next 9 vehicles are specific: year range, engine family, chain count, price band, and where to find one for each. Pick one. Toyota Land Cruiser B, J Series, 1980 through 1985. Mechanical Toyota 3B 4-cylinder diesel, 3.4-liter, indirect injection. Chain count, 0. Throttle cable to the injection pump. Mechanical lift pump. Glow plugs on a manual dash switch. Price band, $11,000 to $22,000, depending on body condition. Source category, private party listings on Bring a Trailer, IH8MUD Forum Classifieds, Hemmings, and occasionally a regional Toyota Land Cruiser club. Grid drops, you turn the key, the engine fires. Your only failure mode on day 1 is the battery, and a kickstart crank handle bolted to the bell housing solves even that. Which is why every BJ40 from a Saudi or Australian export market still has the handle hole. What kills the truck is rust, not electronics. Inspect the frame rails behind the rear cab mount before you buy. 20 minutes with a flashlight and an awl will tell you if you are looking at a $13,000 truck or a $5,000 parts donor. Pick 2. Mercedes Unimog 406 or 416, 1965 through 1988. Mechanical Mercedes OM 352 6-cylinder, 5.7-liter, inline inject. Chain count, 0 on the early ones, 1 of 416 late models with a glow plug timer. Price band, $14,000 to $35,000 for a working example. Source category, industrial liquidations, European Army surplus auctioned through Whitlich and similar government auction sites, and occasionally a domestic farm dispersal where the Unimog has been used as a forestry truck. The Unimog's chain count stays at 0 because every farmer and every Swiss commune that bought one in the 70s wanted to repair it with a wrench, not a laptop. 26 forward gears, portal axles, locking diffs in all 3. If the grid is out for 9 days and you need to pull your neighbor's car out of a creek bed at 3 in the morning, this is the answer. What kills it is parts availability. Mercedes still supplies most consumables through European dealers, but plan a 90-day pipeline for anything other than filters and belts. Pick 3. Toyota Hilux, 5th and 6th generation, 1988 through 1997, equipped with a 2-liter or 2-liter T mechanical injection engine. Chain count, 1. The glow plug timer. Price band, $6,000 to $14,000. Source category: private party listings out of Central and South America. Costa Rica and Panama have an active export market of clean, low-mileage Hilux units. Australian station truck auctions, and Canadian maritime farm dispersals, where these were imported under 25-year exemption rules. Grid drops, the glow plug timer fails. You preheat each cylinder manually with the dash test switch, count to 20, turn the key, it fires. The mechanical injection pump does not care that the rest of the electrical system is dead. What kills it is the timing belt at 80,000 miles. Replace it before you trust the truck. Pick 4. Ford F250, power stroke 7.3 liter, 1994.5 through 2003. International T444E engine, fully electronic on the injector control side, but the high-pressure oil pump and the mechanical fuel supply pump are independent of the ECU. Chain count, 3. ECU, injector driver module, immobilizer on the late 2001 plus PATS-equipped trucks. Price band, $9,000 to $22,000 for a clean, low-mileage example. Source category: OEM fleet. Retire from municipal works departments and contractor dispersals. Private party listings on the Diesel Stop Forum and the Turbo Diesel Register, and Ford-specific dealer auctions like Mannheim. Grid drops. The truck starts as long as the battery has charge and the ECU has not been hit by EMP. Common failure mode is the cam position sensor, $58 at any AutoZone, a 15-minute swap with 1 wrench. A spare in the glove box is cheap insurance. The 7.3 is the floor for Tier 3 trucks that still operate as Tier 2 with a single mitigation. Pick 5. Dodge Ram 2500 or 3500 Cummins 12-valve, 5.9 liter, 1989 through 1998. P7100 mechanical Bosch injection pump. Chain count, 1. The lift pump is electric on the 1994 Plus, mechanical before. Price band, $13,000 to $28,000 for a clean, unmodified 1-ton. Source category: private party listings on Cummins Forum and the Diesel Stop, agricultural dispersals out of the Plains states, and increasingly export broker listings where these are being bought up for South American markets. Grid drops. The engine fires because the P7100 is a fully mechanical injection pump. You turn the key, the starter spins, the pump does its job mechanically. The engine runs. The electric lift pump on 1994 Plus is the one chain link. Buy a spare for $42 from any Cummins dealer, or a mechanical air dog conversion kit for around $500 for permanent independence. The 12-valve Cummins is the most recommended diesel in this whole conversation because it is the rare modern engine designed to keep running when half the truck's electrical system has been pulled. Pick 6. Mitsubishi Fuso Canter, second generation FE serial, 1985 through 1995, with a mechanical 4D32 or 4D334 cylinder engine. Chain count, 0 on early, 1 on 1992 plus with glow timer. Price band, $7,000 to $18,000. Source category, domestic OEM, fleet retire from delivery and landscaping companies, Japanese import via 25-year exemption brokers, and occasionally a U.S. Postal Service surplus auction, where these were used as right-hand drive rural route trucks. Grid drops. The engine starts mechanically. The cab-over layout gives you a 30-foot turning radius for evacuation lanes that bigger trucks cannot navigate, and the four-cylinder sips fuel, 14 to 17 miles per gallon real world. Spare parts come through Fuso USA. With a 2 to 4 week lead on injectors and 24-hour on most filters and belts. What kills it is corrosion in the cab mount frame area. Same inspection rule as the Land Cruiser. Frame rails and rear cab mounts, flashlight, and all. 3 more picks. These are the ones where the chain count tells the most interesting part of the story. Not 0, not 7, somewhere between. And the engineering bypass path is what makes them worth your time. Pick 7. Volkswagen LT35 or LT45 with a 2.5-liter ACL or AGX 5-cylinder turbo diesel, 1996 through 2006. Chain count, 3. ECU, immobilizer, lift pump. But a long-documented mechanical bypass path exists. A wired-in toggle and a $35 generic key delete kit removes the immobilizer chain link entirely. The lift pump can be replaced with a mechanical Stanadyne unit for $185. The ECU can be swapped to a remanufactured unit from German spec parts suppliers like Autodoc or APX Performance for $220. Chain count drops from 3 to 0 with about $400 and Saturday. Price band on the truck itself, $8,000 to $15,000. Source category, European import brokers, Canadian gray market dealers, and increasingly farm dispersals out of upstate New York, where these were imported under the 25-year rule. Substation work, 2013, the night before commissioning a backup transformer. The site had a Unimog parked in the contractor lot, used to drag transform skids into position when the loader was down. 40 years old. The site electrical was out for maintenance, the loader was down, the Unimog started cold, did the work, and parked itself before sunrise. Nobody on the crew remembered the loader. They remembered the Unimog. Pick 8. Stewart and Stevenson, M1078/M1083 LMTV. Light Medium Tactical Vehicle, 1996 through 2005. Caterpillar 3116 or 3126, 6-cylinder turbo diesel. Chain count, 1. The engine ECU on the 3126 only, 0 on the earlier 3116. Price band, $25,000 to $45,000. Source category, GovPlanet, government surplus auction, occasionally Iron Planet for commercial fleet variants. The LMTV was designed to military electromagnetic pulse survivability specifications under MIL-STD-461. Every electronic component on the vehicle has Faraday shielding around the harness, and the ECU box is itself in a shielded enclosure. The truck was specified by people who assumed nuclear blast and EMP scenarios at the design stage. What kills it on the civilian side is the cost of consumables. Caterpillar dealer pricing for 3116 head gaskets is around $2,200. and you cannot avoid the dealer for that part. Plan a $5,000 reserve for first-year maintenance if you buy one. Pick 9. Isuzu NPR or NQR medium-duty cabover, 1998 through 2005, with a 4HE1 or 4HE1-TC 4-cylinder turbo diesel. Chain count 2 ECU and lift pump. Price band $10,000 to $19,000 for a working flatbed or stake bed unit. Source category: U-Haul auction, retire, municipal landscaping fleet dispersal, and private commercial truck listings on Commercial Truck Trader. Grid drops: the ECU stays alive as long as the battery is charged and no EMP has hit. Common failure cure path: a 4HE1-TC ECU costs $340 remanufactured from an Isuzu commercial parts distributor. And a spare in a Faraday bag in the cab brings the truck back online in 20 minutes of harness reconnection. The Isuzu is the truck I would tell a contractor who already drives a pickup and needs a second vehicle for actual hauling that does not depend on his pickup's chain count for a backup. Notice what these 9 vehicles have in common: not the year, not the engine displacement, not the country of origin. The chain count is the variable that holds them together. 0 on picks 1 and 2, 1 on picks 3, 5, 6, and 8, 2 on pick 9, 3 on picks 4 and 7, with a bypass path back to 0. That is the framework. We are about to use it one more time. Here is the buying scene. You're at a private party meet in the parking lot of a Buc-ee's outside San Antonio. 2 trucks. The seller has them parked side by side, hood to hood. On the left, a 1996 F250 Power Stroke 7.3-liter, 214,000 miles, listed at $14,500. On the right, a 1995 Dodge Ram 2500 Cummins 12-valve, 281,000 miles, listed at $16,000. The seller wants you to pick today. You have 1 hour. What you do is open the hood on both, and you look at one thing: the injection pump. On the Ford, you see a fuel solenoid and a wiring harness running into the back of the injection pump body. That is the IDM controlling injector timing electronically. On the Dodge, you see the Bosch P7100 with 8 individual fuel lines coming out the top. No electrical connections, except the lift pump on the side. Same use case. 2 chain counts. The Cummins for $16,000 is the lower risk truck, and you write the check. Different scene. You are walking the rows at a GovPlanet government surplus auction online. Bidding closes at 4 p.m. Eastern. 2 lots. 1. A Stewart & Stevenson M1083 LMTV, 2002. Listed at $34,000. EMP shielded harness intact. 26,000 original miles. 2. A Mercedes Unimog 416, 1980. Listed at $22,000. Dry storage for 15 years. Frame solid. You need 1 truck. Your road is 2 miles of pavement and 12 miles of unmaintained service road to your land. The Unimog wins because it does the actual job. 26 forward gears, portal axles, locking diffs, and the chain count is 0 permanently. Not one with a Faraday shielded harness that you cannot easily replace if something breaks inside it. You bid on the Unimog and walk away from the LMTV without regret. Third scene, and the one most people are actually in. You are sitting at your kitchen table on a Wednesday night, and the truck in your driveway is the 2018 F250 you bought new on a 60-month loan that has 14 months left. Selling it puts you upside down $4,000. You're not buying a new used truck this month. The decision in front of you is which of the three first mitigation moves to do this weekend. A spare ECU in a Faraday bag, an aftermarket DEF delete that ships under emissions-exempt agricultural use parts, or a backup mechanical lift pump and a manual override toggle wired into the injector harness. The right pick is the spare ECU in the Faraday bag, $310 for a remanufactured unit from diesel site, 2-day shipping, because it eliminates the single most likely chain failure: water intrusion, electrical short, EMP, in a single afternoon for the lowest dollar. The other two moves are next month's work. So where does the truck in your driveway sit on this ladder? Now the ladder. Tier 1, pure mechanical, pre-1985. Chain count 0. Examples on this list: Toyota Land Cruiser BJ Series, Mercedes Unimog 406/416, Mitsubishi Fuso Canter, early FE. Tier 2, mechanical injection with light electronics, 1985 through 1995. Chain count 1, usually a glow plug timer or an electric lift pump. Examples: Toyota Hilux 2L/2L-T, Dodge Ram Cummins 12-valve P7100. Tier 3, ECU dependent with mitigation path, 1995 through 2007. Chain count 3 to 6. Examples: Ford F-250 7.3 Power Stroke, BMW LT35 with bypass conversion, Isuzu NPR 4HE1, Stewart & Stevenson LMTV with EMP shielding. Tier 4, full emissions cascade, post-2007 light-duty diesel. Chain count 7 to 12. Every current model F250, Ram 2500, Sierra 2500, Tundra diesel sits in this tier. The only mitigation path is a complete deletion of DEF, DPF, and SCR, which is legal only for off-road and agricultural use under specific federal exemptions, and you should read the actual exemption text in 40 CFR Part 1068 before you spend $1 on a delete kit. The reflex when somebody hears this conversation is to think, the answer is a bigger truck, heavier frame, more horsepower, locker on the front axle, a winch. That is the wrong reflex. A bigger Tier 4 truck has the same 11 electronic links as a smaller Tier 4 truck. The chain count does not care about gross vehicle weight rating. It cares whether the electronic dependency between the key and the cylinder firing is 1 link or 11. A Tier 1 Land Cruiser B. J at $13,000 will roll the morning, a brand new $90,000. Tier 4 F250 sits silent in the same driveway, and that has nothing to do with which truck has more torque on the dyno. Last seen. Before next month, walk under the truck you already own. Find the highest pressure fuel line. It will be the one feeding the rail, or the one feeding the injection pump, depending on tier. Trace it back to its source. Count every electronic connector you pass on the way: ECU plug, sensor harness, immobilizer antenna, injector driver module, glow plug control, DEF dosing module. That is your chain count. Write it on a piece of masking tape and stick it to the inside of the fuse box lid, where you will see it next time you open the hood. Now you know which of the picks fits which gap. A Tier 3 truck like yours with chain count 5, a spare ECU in a Faraday bag, $310 from diesel site this Saturday. A Tier 4 with chain count 11, a Tier 1 or Tier 2 secondary vehicle, source category determined by your budget and your zip code. A Tier 1 already in the driveway, a frame inspection with a flashlight and an awl, 20 minutes, and a kickstart crank handle if the truck did not come with one. Pick the move that matches your truck's tier this Saturday. A Bosch CP4 high-pressure pump, a masking tape label, a garage at 6 in the morning. The chain count of the truck under the lift, 6 injectors quiet at the same moment, or one cylinder firing on geometry alone. The flashlight on the frame rail, the awl in the rust, the number on the tape.